stream. Is everyone okay with that streaming? It's just I like to
Yeah,
keep record of these things.
Yeah.
sure.
Cool. So I know Romain's experience with sort of flying in VORs. What about yours, Albert?
Just basic in the likes of the Kodiak. I know how to put it in and fly it. You know what I
Okay,
mean?
fair enough. So
But
that's
it's
fine. This
very basic.
That's fine. I mean, even this today is not gonna. We're not gonna go into the nitty gritty of sort of like how a VOR works, like the physics or anything like that. I'm gonna give you a very high overview of
Oh
that.
no.
But
Sorry.
what we that's all right. But what we are going to focus is the different uses, the displays a little bit, but also like some of the drawbacks. And the reason I don't really want to go into the nitty gritty is because at the end of the day, we're playing flight sim, and being able to calculate the size of the cone of confusion, for example, is not going to help you.
Okay.
So we're going to discuss those concepts, but we're not actually going to go into very high details.
Okay.
So, why use VORs? And these are the main reasons I could think of. Uh, most of these I think you guys will be familiar with. Navigating from point to point, right? Reaching a VOR.
Yeah.
Pinpointing location, so really useful if you get lost.
Hmm.
VOR DME arcs. I don't know if either of you have flown this on a simulator, raw data.
No.
They're quite fun to do.
Oh yeah.
Procedural approaches. So Albert, were you there when we did the localizer?
Yes,
Yes,
I was. Yeah. Yeah.
because that'll be the instrument approach. So the localizer, the skills we learned in the localizer seminar, it's the
Probably
exact
forgotten
same
them.
thing. It's the exact same thing. Yeah, don't worry, I can send you the link because I streamed that one as well, so
Perfect.
you can have a link for it. So when it comes to the instrument approaches, it's the exact same thing. Then procedural approaches. So when we're talking about, if you look at the Navigraph charts, you'll see that some of them have all these funny routes that an airplane can take. Because we don't always have
Okay.
radar service. We don't always have a star that ends perfectly at the initial approach fix. And sometimes what you got to do is fly over a beacon that's over the airport, and then you do this procedure. And typically that'll be an NDB or a VOR.
Cool.
And then holds. But again, we're really not going to go into too much detail as to how to fly the instrument procedures, purely because they're entire seminars onto themselves.
Okay.
So we'd be here all night. So VORs, omnidirectional radio range, because of course, such a dumb name. But basically, a VOR is a two-part system. The ground station itself, which looks something like this, and then the receiver in the aircraft. Out of curiosity, do either of you know what this big white tower is?
I can only imagine it's kind of a radar system.
Yeah,
It doesn't look like any of the VORs I've encountered, so that's interesting.
that's the DME.
That's the DME part, all right.
That's the
Okay.
DME. So not all VORs have DMEs.
Hmm.
But this one
Yeah.
does. So we'll discuss DMEs a little bit later on, but again, it's not part of the course. So we've got what sort of transmits the VOR signals, and then the receiver in the aircraft. And the important thing is to know is that VORs are calibrated so that it's north magnetic. So if you're looking at your VFR charts and you're planning your flight and you're going, okay, I want to go to the VOR and to the 170 radial, and you're doing versus by the chart, you got to make sure to correct for magnetic variation.
Dope.
So for us in sort of Ireland and the UK, that's usually about 3-4 degrees. For France, typically sort of the Paris area is around 6 or 7 roughly. So that sort of the magnetic, sorry, it's magnetic. Is it variation? Yes, it's variation. Those will be on the charts typically. Or if you use something like SkyVector, it does the correction for you, which is really useful. So the way it works is that you get two signals. You've got one main signal, and then you've got one that's rotating at approximately 30 RPS, so 30 revolutions per second. So very, very fast. And so that creates these oscillating waves. And you can see that in this case with north, the wave function matches the main signal, what we call the reference phase. And then everything else, it will cause a slightly out of phase wave. So the dotted line would be the variable phase. And so that causes basically, what's it called again? Interference, right? So it's the sum of the two waves. So this plus this, this plus this, this plus this, and so forth.
Okay.
And so we use these phase differences to determine a radial. So you use these to figure out where you are relative to the station. VOR displays, I think everybody here is quite comfortable with them since we've used them in flight sim. The main thing is the top, which is the OBS selected using the knob, and also that we are selecting a radial. So if I put north on the VOR, I'm flying north towards the VOR, which means I'm selecting the 180 radial, the reciprocal, because I'm flying along that one. So when I tell you to select the 270 radial, what would you put at the top?
The opposite. What's the opposite to 27? 09.
Yeah, so exactly correct. So that's
Yeah.
how VORs work. So when we're talking about radials, we're talking about the reciprocal.
Ah.
Cool. So then you'll have this flag. This flag can also come up in the shape of a to or four letters. So to or from. The word to or the word from. And all that's telling you is whether you've selected a radial on your side or not. So for instance, if I were to select the 360 radial coming out that way at the top, then that arrow would then be pointing downwards, saying that the radial is behind you.
Okay.
So that's telling you some important information about how VORs work already. So when we're talking about this needle, this is called the CDI, the needle which tells you the deflection from the radial. And in sort of basic aircraft, you'll have the CDI instrument, which just tells you the deviation. However, when you fly slightly nicer airplanes, you'll have something that looks more like this, which is a HSI, a horizontal situation indicator. And this is really nice, right? Because you can set the OBS, but it's overlaid with your direction indicator, which makes it so much easier for situational awareness. Am I teaching anything new at this point? I want to make sure that I'm not preaching to the choir.
Yeah, no, because I don't use steam gauges, so this is interesting.
Yeah, so I go off of base of the steam gauges because, frankly, the displays are the same whether it's digital or steam gauge.
I get you, yeah.
The convention is absolutely the same.
Great.
But absolutely. So when we navigate for VORs, we're looking at three main ways of using them. Navigating towards one, navigating away from one, and intercepting radials. And we're going to look at an example where we would want to intercept radials. In fact, we'll look at two examples. All right. First rule. VORs give you position data, not heading data. So these two aircraft are on the 090 radial. Yeah, the 090 radial. So they've both selected 270, and they're both on it. So the needle is centered for both of them. But one of them is flying towards it, and one of them is not. And this is really important. When you're talking about the CDI itself, and when it's not superimposed onto the horizontal situation indicator, the HSI, it gives you no information as to whether you're pointing in the right direction. just about your position relative to the radial. This is very, very important because you could quite easily lose track. So if this is the CDI and this is the heading indicator, you can see that aircraft 1 is flying along the radial and their needle is going to stay centered. This aircraft, although it's on the radial, as they climb up, the CDI needle is going to deflect. Does that make sense to both of you?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, I think you're both familiar with this. Do I need to go through this?
No, it's just when the radial is if you're left or right, of course.
Yeah. The way I like to imagine it is the dot is the aircraft and the line is what it should is the radial, and you need to make that angle to intercept it correctly.
Okay.
So the further away you are, the steeper the angle to intercept, otherwise you're going to miss it.
Okay.
That's sort of my mental model to make it work in my mind. And that usually works quite well. And you say that when it's centered, 0 degrees, flying parallel, and then when it's a full deflection, 45 degrees.
Okay.
That's sort of my mental model. Then you just sort of interpolate. So here, if that's halfway through, then you're looking about 25-ish, 20 degrees intercept. Navigating to VORs, I think we've covered this enough at this point. So when you're navigating to a VOR, you set the radial, or the reciprocal of the radial you want to fly in, and you center the line. You make sure that you're flying to. Make sure that's in the to. First of all, confirm your hypothesis in terms of where you are in terms of location. And second of all, make sure you haven't picked the wrong one. And then we can navigate from VORs. So again, in this case, I should have put another VOR. That will have either a arrow pointing down, or this will change to a from. Just telling you that you're flying away from the VOR. And so here's two cases. You can fly from one VOR to another. VORs are limited in terms of range. So what might happen is that if these, for example, were 100 miles apart, as an example, you might start to lose signal from this way somewhere halfway through, and so you just switch it to the next one, and then you can continue navigating. Or if you're doing VFR flying, and you say, oh, actually, this VOR intercepts that radial. Maybe I'll just fly over the VOR, and then my next turning point, this big, ugly castle I've drawn on the ground, that's my next turning point, visual turning point. If I fly along that radial, then I'm going to find the castle, and then I'll know where I am on the map, and then I can continue on my navigation.
Cool.
This is an example for VFR flight when you intercept a VOR radial. Very typical. Imagine you're coming from somewhere around here, and so going in that direction would have you clipping the edge of an airspace. And not enough time for it to be a hassle to actually ask clearance to go through, or potentially an airspace where it's very limited, like think something like Heathrow or Shannon or Charles de Gaulle or something, where not a fat chance in hell that you're going to get clearance to get through that. Yeah. So you could pull what a lot of UK pilots tend to pull, which is sort of find like sort of dead reckon around it, and that's why we get so many incursions. Or you might have a VOR somewhere and you go, well, if I fly in this direction, parallel to the airspace, I can then intercept one of the closer radials and then fly inbound. And then that way, I minimize my distance, and at the same time ensure that I stay cleared of controlled airspace. This is usually a nice use case for VORs and VFR. When you're talking about IFR flying, and you decide that you're going really old school, you can do airways the way they used to be flown, which is using multiple ground sources. And so this is an example where you'd have, say, I completely made these airways up. So you got the November 123 and the Mike 21, and then where these two radials intercept, you've got the waypoint Av8. And that's exactly how airways were created at first, right? By using these different radials and DME distances and so forth.
Cool.
And so this is one example. So if you're, say, flying in that direction, and this is the turning point for you to change airways, then you would set the VOR on one VOR receiver and this one on the next, and then when that needle starts to center, you then turn inbound, and that's you flying the airways successfully. That closing bracket is driving me crazy. Okay. So, when you get lost, VORs are a great tool. I have never, ever, ever used this method in my life. Romain, have you ever used this method of finding out where you are?
For training purposes, yeah.
Yeah, for training purposes. Usually, right, when you're doing training, you'll fly like in a 152 or something, and it has one VOR. So
Yeah.
it's a huge hassle. Because think about it. You've got your VFR chart, you tune VOR A, and what you do is you turn the OBS slowly until the chew flag appears and the needle centers. And that will tell you which radial you're on. So then you take your VFR chart, you measure the angle, you take your ruler and you draw a line along that radial. And then you change the frequency, tune in VORB, and do the same thing. Make sure that the flag's on the chew, center the needle, take out your chart, measure the angle, and draw the line. All this while flying an aircraft without autopilot at about 120 miles an hour. So you can imagine how well that technique works. So usually, what I used to teach for this is I'd have the students pick a ground reference and then fly a rectangular pattern around over it, so that you stay in roughly the same area. So one leg they'll use to tune the frequency, they'll turn, and they'll use that one to turn it so the needle's on the chew, then turn and center the needle, and they take their time and they do as many laps as is required, and then find the VOR on the chart, turn, get the compass on the chart, turn, and so forth, and it'll take like 5 minutes. It is a huge hassle. Or you fly an aircraft that has 2 VOR receivers, in which case you save a little bit of time. Or you fly an aircraft with the DME. Sorted. When you're flying with paper charts, you'll have a ruler that has the correct scale on the side, so you can just measure the distances. So you tune the VOR, center the needle, measure the angle, draw the line, and mark the distance. And that'll tell you exactly where you are. Less of a hassle. Or, of course, you could use GPS. Right.
Yeah, better.
Yeah, a little bit better.
Yeah, the only thing I would add to that when you're doing this with the DME is to make sure that you are reading the to from indicator correctly, because otherwise you end up on the other side of the station compared to where you are currently plotting your position.
Yeah.
Okay.
Always check. Always check. Okay, so as I said, we're not going to cover these because these are entire subjects in themselves.
Okay.
Holds in real world flight training is about 10 hours of flight training. So it is literally just burning a hole in the sky, going round and round in circles. But here we're talking about the procedural approaches. You got Chu here, so you can see here where you'd fly. If you look here, you'd fly over this station, this India Oscar Mike, and then you fly outbound on the Chu 40. So the reciprocal radial would be minus 180. I can't do maths right now. 140. 060. So you go on the 060 or the opposite 218 if you're a bigger airplane, smaller airplane. And then at 4 miles DME, you make that turn and you intercept the inbound Isle of Man. and then you go in and then you do the approach. And then you've got the VOR approach itself. Remember we're talking about in the ILS the lock approach, talking about the distance height checks.
Yes.
Here they are, right here. Yeah. And so, funnily enough, you've got this VOR approach is special because this is not co-located with the airport as most VOR approaches are. So as you can see here, the approach starts at 0 miles. And then as you get further away, you get lower and lower. And I hate approaches like this.
Hmm.
And there's a reason I hate approaches like this, is because of one of the drawbacks of VORs that we'll talk in the next slide. But basically, VORs are less accurate with distance.
Yeah.
So as you fly, the accuracy actually reduces, as opposed to ILS localizers or VOR that's co-located with the airports. And then you got the procedural. Here's another example of a procedural that is co-located with the airport. Yeah, so you fly outbound, and then you turn, and so these will have different distances that you would turn at. It doesn't show any indication here, so most likely you'd have to look at the charts that would tell you when you would turn, and then you've got that hold in there. Right. I bet Romain hasn't tuned VORs like that. Albert, I am 99% sure you haven't tuned VORs this way.
Nope.
Because it's a 3-step process.
Yes.
Step 1, tune and select the frequency. Step 2, press the audio button so you can listen to the Morse code. Romain, how often have you done this in the real aircraft?
Again, for training purposes, on older aircraft, and that's about it.
Yeah. So nowadays you've got wonderful tools like the G1000 that will auto-identify.
That's it.
Yes. Yeah.
But you still need to look at you still need to identify it by looking at the 3-letter code. Because what happens are these clever systems, they listen to the Morse and then they decode it and then they display it for you. Does this mean you need to memorize and learn Morse code?
I hope not.
Nah, there you go. You got them right here, yeah? MIA right there. You got IOM right there. You don't need to learn. In fact, there was a guy who decided to memorize it anyways because he just didn't want to check the charts. So he decided to memorize it. And so he was doing his instrument exam. He's flying with the examiner, and so he's doing the thing, tune the VOR, listen to the ident, turns on the audio. Beep, 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 beep. He goes, yep, bloop. And the examiner goes, well, what did it say? And the guy turns around to the examiner and goes, beep, 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 beep.
Beautiful.
Anyways. And then the final step is to set the OBS to what you want it to be. Whether that's centering the needle or selecting the reciprocal of the inbound radial. Or perhaps the outbound radial, right, if you're going to do it from. But it is a 3-step process. And these are the 3 steps you need to do. Tune the frequency, positively identify. Why do we positively identify? What are the main reasons we positively identify? There's one main one I'm thinking about.
You mean aside from the obvious confusion?
Confusion in what sense?
In the sense that you might have tuned the incorrect frequency, or you might have forgotten to check in the NOTAM that it's been replaced by a temporary VOR because it's undergoing maintenance, or all those kind of things.
Yeah, absolutely. So you absolutely. So you might have tuned the wrong frequency, and as you said, perhaps it's out of service, and that there's a NOTAM telling you to change frequencies or whatever. But also some VORs share frequencies.
Also.
And so if you're in between the two, you might receive both.
Oh.
Or you might be at the point where you're just about to lose coverage from one and about to enter the other, and you're looking for the other, and then you tune it, and then you're setting the needle centered for the wrong one. So this is why we verify. Okay, disadvantages of VORs. It's VHF, so we get decreased accuracy over distance. Always imagine radio signals to be a bit like a cone, whether it's vertical or horizontal. Yeah, so when I'm talking about this, the signals, I mean each individual signal for the 360 degree around the cardinal compass. And so that means that the further out you go, the wider that range, and that can go up to 2 degrees until you lose the signal, which is loss of signal, LOS, because it's VHF. So 2 degrees can be quite significant, especially when you're doing approaches, or when you're flying in airspace with very limited vertical and horizontal separations, like in RVSM, which is why in RVSM airspace, this does not fly. At higher altitudes, you could have different VORs interfering with each other. Remember, you could have VORs using the same or similar frequencies, so you might have some sort of errors. And then you got this thing called the cone of confusion. And so this is the image I've got on the right here. And so the higher up you go, the bigger the cone of confusion. So what happens is that when you get very close to the VOR, the needle is going to be super sensitive. And at one point, it's going to become completely unreliable. And you need to be aware of this, because what you don't want to be doing is chasing the needle at that point. You just want to fly the heading and wait until the flag flips. And so recognizing that you're entering the cone of confusion is very important, because especially when you're doing holds, for example. So when you're doing holds, you're flying inbound, you're tracking the center line, the needle, you keep it dead center, you start to see it deviate, you add a small correction, but the deviation just keeps increasing. You can try and chase it, or say, okay, crap, that's it, we're on the cone of confusion. Go back onto your track, wait till the flag flips, and then start the turn. So that's really important as well. Cool. The end. That was really short. So a very short one, really. But I guess at this point, are there any questions?
No.
Cool.
I didn't know about the little triangle thing, so that's good. I didn't know that was putting you on heading, or that one. I didn't know that was what it was for.
Well,
So that's good.
Pretty vital.
What is it you normally fly, Albert?
It's the G1000, the Kodiak 100 mostly.
Ah, yeah, I need to buy that. That looks phenomenal.
Yeah, so it's the G1000.
Yeah.
So as you said, it actually does it for you.
Oh,
But
yeah.
I'm going to actually try an aircraft with the steam gauges now, just for fun, on my own, with no one looking.
do you use the NXI, the working title G1000?
Yes.
Good.
Yeah.
I mean, with that being available in the marketplace for free, there's no excuse not to use it.
Yeah, honest to God, it's brilliant. Yeah,
It is absolutely phenomenal.
And the Kodiak is brilliant as well. It's just a little step up from the Caravan. Everything works in it at least. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And now it's a European project as well.
Is it?
Yeah, it's been bought off by Daher. Makers of the CBM.
That's right. Yeah.
Oh, interesting. I didn't know Daher had bought. Ah.
Cool.
Yeah, I'm fairly sure they have.
Yeah, it was Quest, I think, brought it out first or something.
Yeah. They bought it off. Can you go back to a slide where you have the not the HSI, the CDI indicator somewhere? Because there's something that I thought you would mention that I was taught. The previous one is great. Is when you have that, and well, now never mind the fact that it's flagged, but even though you in the case that you don't have an HSI and you have just that, and for example, so now we are on the 255 radial.
Yeah.
But suppose you were trying to intercept another radial, and you let's use another one where you have a maybe 2 slides down. Yeah, more or less. Yeah, okay. If you look at the aircraft on the left here, and let's say so the 360 or 180 radial is somewhere to your left.
Yeah.
But you don't. You would place your current heading on the instrument and make sure that you're going towards the needle, to make sure that you're actually flying towards the radial and not away from it.
Oh, I
see what I mean?
So you set first that radial And that's
No, if you hang on, it would probably be better if we had a sim running. I'll try and see if I can
yeah, I can here.
shoot.
Let me remove my work computer and then I can plug in my yoke.
Well, I've got P3D loading up right now. I'll try
yeah.
and share it.
Yeah, please do.
Because sometimes I remember, for example, I was flying myself, and there was an aircraft that came up on our air-to-air frequency on the airfield I was flying around, and he said, "I'm lost." And someone piped up and said, "Well, the airfield is in the 250 radio from the Bravo Sierra November VOR," and he was like, "Yeah, okay," and
Still lost.
that didn't help him much. And what I did was I explained over the radio how to briefly use the VOR, what you've just did, but by adding the information of how to use your heading on the CDI. Come on then. Thought it would be the faster of the three sims to load up. There we go. Change vehicle. Which aircraft would have? There's a Cessna in P3D. No, there isn't.
No, there's no default Cessna. You can use
Is there the mall?
Yeah, the mall. You got the Bonanza, I think.
The mall is fine.
Ian would be flipping his.
Change airport. Where would I see a proper VOR? Lima Fox Mike Oscar. India, I mean. Other than that, we'll just change. It's going to load rather fast. I don't have many add-ons on this one. I just use the T45. So.
Oh crap! I forgot to move the stuff in my community folder before the update.
Ouch.
I know, I forgot to move mine as well, but I started it up earlier and didn't see.
And what does it do?
I think I lost a couple of frames per second, but I think I was in Gatwick, and I think I have the add-on for Gatwick, which is probably giving problems anyway. So
but what happens when you apply the update without moving the community folder contents away?
I don't know. I've done it twice already now, and nothing really happened. So
they always recommend to remove it because it can cause some bugs sometimes.
Yeah.
Oh, right. Oh, this one has got. Oh, it's got a CDI as well. Very good. Little nav map, and I'm going to share my screen in a minute. There should be a VOR on this airport. Oh, there are two. That's beautiful. Okay. Share. Where is it? Hello. Share P3D. There we go. Is it working?
Second now. Yep.
Okay, great.
Oh, there's another update.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tune a VOR that's fairly close by. So 112.7. There we go. Oh no, it's the one. That's the HSI. That's the one I do not want to use. Hello. Ah.
Hello there.
There we go. Okay, so at the moment we are. Yes. Okay. So we are on the 3-3 radial from the station. So if we look at the station, we draw a line from the station heading 330 or somewhere along that line. So what I've been taught was if you tune a radial towards the station, or what we call a QDM, let's say this one for example. So I want to intercept the 180 degree radial into the station. So I want to be flying heading south straight to the station. If my current heading is at the moment 330, I'll just look somewhere on that screen here, heading 330, and I check that it's pointing towards the needle. At the moment it is not. So what this is telling me is that by flying my current heading of 330, I will never intercept that needle. Okay. However, if I'm going to slow the aircraft around. Oh, it doesn't like that. It doesn't like that. Okay, never mind.
Why doesn't it like slew?
Because I haven't set my my keyboard shortcuts, most likely.
Fair enough.
There we go.
Look at
If
this
I
guy
find
flying on instruments if I've ever seen it.
if I
Yeah.
fly here on a heading of 220 and I that's still not good actually.
Yeah. Why is that? Wait, hold on. Stop there. Stop there. Albert, why wasn't that good? The previous one.
I have no idea.
Look, so if let's say Roman, can you turn a little bit to
Yeah,
the right?
I can.
If
Or the triangle, is it?
yeah, so let's stop there, Romain, and look at his heading indicator. What heading is he flying now? Oh, assuming he's in the air. What heading is he pointing at?
Just south. Well, just off south to
Yeah.
but 190.
Yeah, 190,
Yep.
200 even, yeah?
Yeah.
Now look at the VOR on the right side. The one that he's trying to follow. So what radial has he selected? Or sorry, should I say what heading inbound has he selected?
South.
Yeah,
No.
south. And what's the needle showing? The white line.
It's showing that you got to turn left basically to intercept it, is it?
Yeah, that you're to the right of it, so you need to
Yeah.
go to the left to intercept it. But
Yeah.
see how his heading is to the right of south.
Yes.
So unless Roland flies around the bloody globe,
Oh, he won't meet it.
he won't meet it. So
Okay, I
so
gotcha.
he's got to change the heading.
That's
Okay,
right.
Roland, yeah. So can you continue your demo?
If I turn anywhere from here, 180 to all the other way around to heading north, let's stop here at a heading of 100. So if I look at the CDI here, heading 100 is here, and I'm definitely flying from the center of the instrument, which is my position, towards that direction of 100, and I will definitely cross the line. So I'm flying in the right direction in order to intercept the radial 180 inbound to the station, whatever name it is, Lima Mike something, whatever.
Perfect.
So it's when you have only a CDI, it's convenient, because if you have an HSI, it will do it for you. Because as I said, I'm going to set this is the same station. I've got it 112.7 tune on both nav1 and nav2. If I tune here, I'm going slowly because now it's my current position, and obviously as soon as I set the correct radial, obviously the yellow line is going to be in the same position as the one on the CDI. But because my heading is already centered, let's say, quote, north, unquote, it's at the top of the instrument, obviously it's very obvious that I'm flying in the right direction, which is towards the needle.
Yep. Absolutely. Does that clear it up at all, Albert?
Yeah, it does.
So
Well,
what
that's
was
just
it?
it.
So what was it that the guy was confused by?
Who?
Oh,
Which guy?
The guy.
Oh, the one who was lost?
Yeah.
Oh,
It's just that he was at his wit's end because he was already lost, and the only instruction that the other guy gave on the RT was just look for the 250 radial from Bravo Sierra November.
Jesus.
And he was, I think I seem to remember he was a student pilot on one of his solo navigation legs. And so what I just did, I just told him, well, tune, I think it was actually the same frequency, 112.7. So tune the proper frequency, just center the needle, and just tell me what it is, and tell me what the triangle shows, or if it's to and from, and fly from that direction, search heading, so as to intercept the radial 250, and you should look at the airport, and that was it.
Yeah. So VORs can be confusing at first.
Yes, they can.
But they're actually pretty useful tools. They are
Yeah.
being phased out. There's no need for
Oh,
them
yeah.
anymore.
Unfortunately, yeah. Oh, they're expensive to maintain, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me stop the stream because we don't really need it anymore.
Yep.